Yo, what's up? In the latest Uncle Howdy video, we saw Bo Dallas and Uncle Howdy merge into one, but let's look into the context clues a bit and try to decipher this a bit more. Before we get into the full analysis, I do want to give some props to this thing I saw on Twitter where they pointed out that Bo Dallas's eyes often turned blue throughout the segment, which I believe could be a tie-in to the whole family idea, with Bray being his brother and all, and maybe it's like this is some new form of the Wyatt family through the Wyatt Six, and that's why we get the blue eyes like his brother had. The recording begins with Bo asking, "What are we doing here?" which I think implies that one of my theories was already right. The theory that Uncle Howdy had brought Bo Dallas there in order to dissect his mind because of the abilities of the Funhouse. To fully understand this theory, you need to go back and see one of my other videos, but yeah, I believe that I was right about this, and that's why they're here. Hence why Bo's being so direct with the "what are we doing here?" Immediately following this, we get Uncle Howdy asking if Bo Dallas really believes that he brought them back to life. Based on the designs of the Wyatt Six and them being the only them that could really be talked about, we're led to believe that he brought the Funhouse puppets back to life, which were a part of Bray's mind but also connected to the Funhouse. The fact that the blue eyes thing keeps happening and we get mentions of bringing the puppets back to life, which were believed to be a part of Bray's mind, could tie in together, but truthfully, I don't think they are because the Funhouse is a separate entity from Bray, in my opinion. Bo then details that he is destined to do whatever his goal is, which we'll learn later on in the promo, which leads into Howdy asking, "Do you think you're special?" Which I think is really interesting because I think we've seen that in some of the past QR codes, but more importantly, we got that on Twitter over and over and over from the official Wyatt Six group. So we're getting answers to QR codes. We're getting answers to even the tweets they make. I think it's all just really interesting how they're putting this story together. Bo believes that everybody wanted to forget about them and abandon them, which comes into some of his later motivations. An interesting detail that I think still feeds into my theory of Howdy almost like corrupting Bo's mind is the "there you are" line. We saw it in the last segment, it was kind of odd, but to see it here again almost every time when Bo's angry or upset, and for him to be like, "There you are," it's because he wants Bo to belittle himself so that he can take over. And I think it's a really interesting detail. He has almost like this catchphrase way of doing that. They weren't chosen, just willing, he says, and then begins to talk about Miri Clay, which I think is interesting because we've seen that Bible verse before in these types of storylines with these characters and everything. And I think all these religious tie-ins could have something to do with this being cult-like, similar to with Bray Wyatt and all of his cults, because religion often ties those type of things in, truthfully. It also brings us into the earlier days of the Nightbird story with the cave and how they were set free from within the cave. I'm assuming that the cave would be possibly these people's minds, as they're all fucked up and deranged characters from the get-go, really. I also believe it's interesting that there's this idea of him having save them and them sacrifice themselves. I wonder why they would have done that, or if they were even actually willing. Because currently we can't trust either of these characters, as they've both been shown to be not great people character-wise. "We've become a family," he says, which I think is really, really interesting given the whole blue eyes and everything, and the cultish like tie-ins to all of this. It's almost like a second coming of the Wyatt family, which I mentioned earlier, which I think would be a really, really good take and way to continue on the legacy of the character. Now this I believe is the most interesting part of the entire video. He talks about false prophets. He says that they're belittling their family's name, which gives us so much insight onto his views. I think after the loss of Bray, he began to value family so much more, and to see the way that families are often treated within the WWE hurts him. So that's why he's attacking Chad Gable with the recent Alpha Academy shit. That could be why maybe in the future he'll attack Dominic Mysterio. Maybe in the future he could attack a broken up tag teams. We're not sure completely what he's going to do, but now we're given solid motivation. From here's where I think it starts to get really, really interesting. It's when we begin to see the merging. Of course, within the merging, we get all these interesting lines and ideas of things that we've heard before. I am all of us, I am nobody. But what's way, way more interesting to me is that the door starts to glow in the back. I have two unique theories for this, with theory number one being a bit more outlandish. Theory number one, it is beginning to create Uncle Howdy. So, my general thought process for this theory is that the Fiend already existed within Bray Wyatt's mind, as we know from promos way before the Funhouse existed. And all the Funhouse did was derive that out of Bray's mind. And now, as they begin to merge, as they're saying the same things, Uncle Howdy and Bo Dallas, it then begins to glow as if, and now that they're merging, it's finally bringing Uncle Howdy out of just his mind and into reality again. Uncle Howdy he existed as part of Bo's mind, but he succeeded his goal with the Funhouse. He's taken him over, and now he can be put out there like the Fiend was. Because truthfully, Uncle Howdy is Bo Dallas's Fiend. Theory number two, they enter through the Funhouse. There's a glowing light when they enter, similar to Bray Wyatt's entrance through that door. And also, there were glowing lights in the segment with Chad Gable, and it was all that bright white light. So they could possibly be entering from within the Funhouse every time, which means maybe it's altering them before they come out every time. Now, that theory is very weak, but I do believe they could definitely be entering through the Funhouse. Hopefully you enjoyed the analysis, but nothing I said is truly fact. It's all just some fun theories and ideas.